Here's what nobody tells you about hitting rock bottom at 25. Sometimes the breakdown is actually a breakthrough in disguise. 1 in 4 Americans are experiencing peak burnout before they even turn 30. That's not a typo. While our parents burned out in their 40s juggling careers and families, we're collapsing before we've barely started. But here's the thing that's kept me up at night researching this. What if we're looking at burnout completely wrong? What if the crisis everyone's talking about is hiding something we desperately need to understand? I need you to forget everything you think you know about burnout for the next few minutes, because the story you've heard, the one about self-care and work-life balance, that's only half the picture. The other half, it might be the most important thing our generation learns. Let me start with something that sounds counterintuitive. About 66% of millennials report moderate or high levels of burnout, higher than Gen Z at 56%. We're not just tired, we're experiencing what researchers are calling a fundamental identity crisis wrapped in exhaustion. And here's where it gets interesting. When I started digging into recovery stories, into what happens after people crash, I found something unexpected. The people who came back from burnout weren't just recovering, they were transformed, completely different humans doing completely different things. Think about that for a second. What does it mean when burnout changes people so fundamentally that they can't return to who they were? Millennials grew up believing work would be the source of identity, meaning, and success, that finding something you love means you'll never work a day in your life. Then reality hit. We became the first generation less economically secure than our parents. The promise shattered, and Gen Z watched it all happen in real time, entering a workplace already broken. Housing costs increased 121% from 1960 to 2017, while median household income rose only 29%. We're running twice as hard to stay in the same place our parents started from. But here's what's buried in all the statistics and sob stories. Burnout isn't just destroying us, it's revealing something crucial about how we've been living, about what we've been taught to value, about who we've been trying to become. Let me tell you about Sarah. Not her real name, but her story is painfully real. Corporate lawyer, crushing it by everyone's external metrics, partnership track, 6 figures before 30. Then one Tuesday morning, she couldn't get out of bed. Not didn't want to, physically couldn't. Her body had shut down. 3 months of medical leave later, she's teaching yoga and consulting part-time. Here's the kicker. She told me the burnout was the best thing that ever happened to her. Wait, what? That's the part that doesn't make sense, right? How does complete collapse become the best thing? This is where it gets fascinating. Burnout creates an identity void, forcing people to discover who they are beneath the resume. When everything you've built your sense of self around crumbles, you're left with a terrifying question. Who am I without my job title, without my achievements, without the hustle? For some people, that question destroys them. For others, it liberates them. The difference isn't in the burnout itself, it's in what happens next. Gen Z and millennials hit peak burnout at just 25 years old, 17 years earlier than the average American. This early collision with our limits is unprecedented. Our parents had decades to build their identities gradually. We're getting crash courses in existential crisis before our brains are even fully developed. And while that sounds tragic, and it is in many ways, it's also giving us something previous generations didn't have: time. Time to rebuild, time to reimagine, time to construct lives that actually work for us instead of against us. Here's what researchers discovered that changed how I see this whole crisis. There are 2 types of burnout. Circumstantial burnout might improve when a difficult rotation ends, but existential burnout requires deliberate examination of meaning and professional purpose. Most of us are dealing with the second kind. We're not just tired from working too much, we're spiritually exhausted from working toward the wrong things. The breakthrough that's hiding inside the breakdown, it forces us to confront that truth. Think about the pressure we've been under since childhood, earlier and earlier academic stress, college debt that chains us to careers we might hate. Students leaving college with loans of $200,000 to $300,000 face unbelievable financial pressure. Social media showing us everyone else's highlight reel while we're drowning in our everyday reality. Social media makes upward social comparisons problematic and amplifies microstressors, small everyday pressures that accumulate and lead to burnout over time. No wonder we're collapsing. The miracle isn't that we're burning out, the miracle is that we survived this long. But here's the part that gives me hope, the part that makes me think this crisis might actually save us. We're the first generation to hit this wall with enough time and resources to actually rebuild differently. Gen Z is surfacing conversations about work-life balance and mental health that previous generations never had. We're not just suffering silently, we're speaking up, setting boundaries, demanding better. Gen Z employees assert personal boundaries in relationships and workplaces without being daunted, resulting in healthier dynamics and reduced burnout. While older managers sometimes struggle with this directness, it's actually revolutionary. We're rewriting the rules in real time. And this is where the other side of burnout reveals itself, the side nobody talks about because it's complicated and messy and doesn't fit into neat productivity hack videos. The other side of burnout is wisdom. It's clarity. It's the brutal but necessary realization that the game we've been playing is rigged, and maybe we need to stop playing it. Recovering from burnout changes you. Your career may feel out of sync with who you've become, and that's growth, not failure. The people I talked to who came through burnout successfully, none of them went back to their old lives. They couldn't. Once you've seen through the illusion, you can't unsee it. One guy I spoke with, let's call him Marcus, was in tech sales, making bank, living the startup dream, working 80 hours a week. Burnout hit him at 28. He spent 6 months recovering, doing nothing but reading and hiking and figuring out who he actually was. Now he runs a small woodworking business, makes a quarter of what he used to, and told me he's happier than he's ever been. Not in that fake Instagram influencer way, in a real, grounded, I actually sleep at night now way. That's the pattern I kept finding. The other side of burnout looks like living smaller but feeling bigger, working less but mattering more, earning less money but having more wealth and the things that actually count: time, relationships, peace, purpose. Burnout is often a misalignment with growth, structure, and pacing. When you've gone as far as you can go, it's time to start over with new skills, lessons, and perspectives. This reframe is everything. What if burnout isn't failure? What if it's feedback? Your body and mind telling you this path isn't working. Choose differently. But, and this is crucial, this only becomes transformative if we let it be, if we use it as a mirror instead of a mistake, if we ask better questions. Not, how do I get back to normal, but what if normal was the problem? Career transformation from burnout involves 5 stages: recognizing suffering, questioning whether the current path is the only option, researching alternatives, making changes, and ultimately transforming into someone new. This isn't quick. It's not a weekend retreat or a self-help book. It's deep, uncomfortable, identity-level work. And here's the hard truth. Not everyone makes it through. Some people get stuck in the suffering stage, unable to imagine alternatives. Some people recognize they need change but feel too trapped by debt, by family obligations, by fear. The system is designed to keep us running on the hamster wheel even when it's killing us. But knowing this, really understanding how the game works, that knowledge itself is power. Millennial managers now emphasize respecting boundaries, being empathetic, and addressing burnout, raising the bar on what constitutes good management. We're starting to change the culture from the inside. Slowly, painfully, but it's happening. The other side of burnout isn't about bouncing back. It's about building different. It's about questioning every assumption we've inherited about success, productivity, and what makes a life worth living. It's about choosing meaning over metrics, presence over productivity, enough over everything. Does this mean everyone needs to quit their jobs and become yoga teachers? No, that's not realistic or necessary, But it does mean getting honest about what's sustainable and what's not, about what feeds you and what depletes you, about who you're becoming and whether you actually like that person. Research shows that daily recovery activities, low effort, enjoyable activities, social interactions, and physical exercise are more important than waiting for weekends or vacations. Recovery has to be woven into our daily lives, not postponed until we've earned it. Because here's the truth: if you're waiting until you've made it to start living, you've already lost. The other side of burnout is accepting that you might never achieve the level of economic stability your parents had. Many millennials are reconciling with the fact that they might never achieve the economic stability of the boomer generation. That acceptance isn't defeat, it's liberation from an impossible standard. It's saying, okay, the old American dream is dead. What do we build instead? What does a good life look like when home ownership is out of reach, retirement feels like science fiction, and the climate is literally on fire? How do we find meaning and joy and purpose in a world that seems designed to extract everything from us? These aren't